In the quiet corridors of Kensington Palace, where history whispers through every stone and portraits of kings and queens watch from gilded frames, a mother's heart beats with bittersweet anticipation. Today isn't just another day in the royal calendar filled with ceremonies and obligations. Today, Catherine, Princess of Wales, will watch through her camera lens as her youngest child transforms before her eyes from toddler to little boy, capturing moments that will freeze time forever, while knowing that time itself refuses to slow down for anyone, not even royalty. The first rays of April sunlight filtered through the tall windows of apartment 1A at Kensington Palace, casting dancing shadows across the polished floors, where 5-year-old Prince Louis had scattered his toy cars the night before. Catherine stirred in her bed, immediately aware that today carried a weight different from the usual royal engagements that filled their calendar. Today would mark another milestone in her youngest son's life, one that would be captured in photographs and shared with the world, but more importantly, one that would be treasured in her heart as another step in his journey from baby to boy. The palace had been unusually quiet in the early morning hours. Prince William had left early for a charity engagement, promising to return in time for the afternoon portrait session. Princess Charlotte was still asleep, her room adorned with drawings she had made for Louis's special day, while Prince George had already been collected by his security detail for a school football match. The silence gave Catherine a rare moment of solitude to prepare not just the logistics of the day, but her emotions for what lay ahead. She moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency, yet her mind wandered to 5 years ago, when Louis had entered their world with such dramatic flair. Born on St. George's Day, he had arrived weighing 8 pounds and 7 ounces, his lusty cries echoing through the private wing of St. Mary's Hospital. From that very first moment, Louis had possessed an energy that seemed to illuminate every room he entered, bringing laughter and chaos in equal measure to their carefully structured royal life. Catherine remembered how different each of her children had been as newborns. George, their firstborn, had been serious and contemplative even as a baby, seeming to understand the weight of his future role. Charlotte had been determined and spirited from day one, her personality shining through with every gurgle and smile. But Louis had been pure joy personified, a child who found wonder in the simplest things and whose infectious laughter could brighten even the most challenging of days. As she prepared Louis's breakfast, Catherine found herself studying his sleeping form through the doorway of his bedroom. His chestnut hair, so much like William's, fell across his forehead in soft waves. His little hands were curled into loose fists, and his breathing was steady and peaceful. In sleep, he looked so much younger than his 5 years, still very much her baby despite his protests that he was now a big boy who could do everything by himself. The irony wasn't lost on her that today's photographs would capture Louis at 5, the same age George had been when Louis was born. The circle of time seemed to spin faster with each passing year, each birthday bringing new independence and growth, but also taking her children further from those precious early days when they needed her for everything. Mrs. Henderson, their longtime housekeeper, arrived earlier than usual, her arms filled with freshly pressed clothing options for the portrait session. She had been with the family since George was born and had witnessed countless milestone moments, but even she seemed to understand the particular significance of this day. "He's growing so fast, Your Royal Highness," Mrs. Wood, Henderson remarked quietly as she hung the small garments in Louis's wardrobe. "Seems like just yesterday he was toddling around these halls in his nappies, getting into everything he could reach." Catherine smiled at the memory. Louis had indeed been their most adventurous child, the one who climbed furniture before he could properly walk, who turned every cardboard box into a spaceship or castle, who asked endless questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether the Queen's horses ever got tired of carrying people around. The morning progressed with its usual rhythm, but Catherine found herself more observant than usual, noting the small details that might otherwise pass unnoticed. The way Louis hummed while eating his porridge, creating little melodies that seemed to come from nowhere. How he insisted on wearing his favorite dinosaur socks because they made him feel brave and strong. The careful way he arranged his toy soldiers on the windowsill so they could guard the palace while he was away. When Louis finally emerged from his room, hair tousled and still in his pajamas, he launched himself into Catherine's arms with the enthusiasm that characterized everything he did. His embrace was fierce and complete, the way only a child's hug can be, holding nothing back in his expression of love and trust. "Mummy, is today really my special photo day?" he asked, his bright blue eyes sparkling with excitement. "Will I have to stand very still like a soldier?" Catherine smoothed his hair and looked into those eyes that held such innocence and wonder. "Yes, darling, but you don't have to be a soldier. You just need to be yourself, my beautiful Louis." "Can I bring Mr. Dinosaur?" he asked. referring to his beloved stuffed triceratops that had been his constant companion since his second birthday. "Of course you can," Catherine replied, though she knew the photographers would likely prefer formal portraits without toys. But this was Lewis's day, and if Mr. Dinosaur brought him comfort and confidence, then Mr. Bengal, Dinosaur, would be welcome in every shot. As they moved through the morning routine of washing, dressing, and breakfast, Catherine found herself documenting everything in her mind. The way Louis insisted on brushing his own teeth, though he still needed help reaching the back ones. How he practiced his royal wave in the mirror, giggling at his own reflection. The serious concentration on his face as he attempted to tie his own shoes, his tongue poking out slightly as he focused on the task. The photography team began arriving mid-morning, their equipment cases and lighting setups transforming the usually comfortable family spaces into something more formal and professional. Louis watched from the top of the stairs, fascinated by the activity below, asking Catherine a steady stream of questions about what everything was for and why they needed so many lights when the sun was already shining. "Photography is like painting with light," Catherine explained, drawing on her own experience with the medium that had become such a passion for her.
"The photographers are artists, and they use their cameras the way painters use brushes." Louis considered this seriously, then announced,
"I want to be a photographer when I grow up, so I can take pictures of dinosaurs and dragons, and maybe some real princes."
The innocence of his statement brought tears to Catherine's eyes. Here was her son, a real prince himself, dreaming of photographing imaginary princes and extinct dinosaurs, seeing magic in the ordinary world around him. As the morning wore on, the reality of the day began to settle in more deeply. This wasn't just another birthday or another photo session. This was 5 years of watching Louis grow, 5 years of first words and first steps, first day of nursery school and first friendships, 5 years of scraped knees and bedtime stories, of Christmas mornings and summer holidays, of quiet moments and loud adventures. Catherine thought about all the changes that 5 years had brought to their family. When Louis was born, they were still adjusting to life as a family of 5. George was just beginning to understand his future role. Charlotte was establishing her place as the family's spirited middle child, and William was growing into his responsibilities as a future king. Now, 5 years later, they had found their rhythm as a family, each child secure in their place and loved for exactly who they were. The preparations continued through the late morning, with Catherine coordinating between the photography team, the palace staff, and Louis's own needs and schedule. She wanted everything to be perfect, but more than that, she wanted Louis to feel comfortable and happy. These photographs would be shared with the world, but they would also become family treasures. Images they would look back on years from now when Louis was grown and perhaps had children of his own. As lunchtime approached, Catherine realized that her emotions were running closer to the surface than usual. Perhaps it was because Louis was their youngest, making each milestone feel more final. Perhaps it was because 5 seemed like such a significant age, the bridge between early childhood and the school years that lay ahead. Or perhaps it was simply because time had a way of accelerating when you wanted most to slow it down. The morning had been filled with ordinary moments that felt extraordinary, simply because Catherine was paying such close attention to them. Soon, Louis would be dressed in his formal clothes, posed in front of cameras, transformed into the little prince the world would see in newspapers and magazines. But this morning, he had simply been her 5-year-old son, full of questions and energy and love, and she had tried to absorb every second of it. As they headed toward lunch, Louis slipped his small hand into hers, a gesture so natural and trusting that it made her heart ache with the sweetness of it. In a few hours, these same hands would be positioned carefully for formal portraits. But right now, they were simply the hands of her little boy, reaching for her in the way children do when they know they are loved and safe. The afternoon would bring cameras and lights, formal poses and careful smiles, but the morning had been theirs, alone, filled with the real moments that no photograph could ever truly capture, the moments that lived only in a mother's heart and memory. The transformation of the blue drawing room at Kensington Palace had been nothing short of remarkable. What was usually a space for intimate family gatherings had become a professional photography studio, complete with reflective screens, multiple camera setups, and lighting equipment that cast a warm golden glow throughout the room. Catherine stood at the threshold, taking in the scene while Louis pressed close to her side, his eyes wide with curiosity and just a hint of nervousness. Matt Porteous, the photographer who had captured so many of their family's precious moments over the years, approached them with his characteristic warm smile. He had photographed Louis since infancy, documenting everything from his christening to previous birthday celebrations, and had developed a special rapport with the youngest prince that put him at ease in front of the camera. "There's my favorite subject," Matt said, crouching down to Louis's eye level. Are you ready to show everyone what a handsome 5-year-old prince looks like? Louis nodded solemnly, clutching Mr. Dinosaur a little tighter. Mummy says you paint with light, he announced. Can you paint a dinosaur with your camera? Matt's eyes crinkled with amusement. I can certainly try. Maybe we can create some magic together. The first setup was designed to be the most formal, capturing Louis in traditional royal portrait style. Catherine watched as the styling team made final adjustments to his navy blue shorts and crisp white shirt, ensuring every detail was perfect. His hair had been combed neatly, though she knew it would inevitably fall across his forehead in the way that made him look so much like his father. As Louis was positioned in front of the camera, Catherine found herself holding her breath. He looked so small among all the equipment and assistants, yet there was something regal about the way he held himself, an unconscious dignity that seemed to come naturally despite his young age. She thought about all the royal portraits that hung in palaces across the kingdom, generations of princes and kings captured at various stages of their lives, and now her Louis would join that historic collection. The first few shots were challenging. Louis, despite his natural confidence, seemed overwhelmed by the formal atmosphere. His smile appeared forced and his posture was stiff with the effort of trying to be perfect. Catherine could see the tension in his small shoulders and recognized the signs that he might soon become frustrated or upset. Let's take a little break, Matt suggested diplomatically. Perhaps your Royal Highness would like to show me that dinosaur. Louis immediately perked up, launching into an enthusiastic explanation of Mr. Dinosaur's various adventures and accomplishments. As he spoke, his natural animation returned, his hands gesturing expressively as he described how Mr. Dinosaur was actually a very brave triceratops who protected castles and helped other dinosaurs when they were scared. Catherine watched the transformation with relief and admiration. This was the Louis she knew best, the storyteller who could turn any ordinary object into the hero of an elaborate tale. Matt, with the patience and skill that had made him the family's trusted photographer, listened intently while subtly adjusting his equipment and lighting to capture this more natural version of the birthday prince. You know what, Louis? Matt said after listening to the complete dinosaur saga. I think Mr. Dinosaur might be camera shy. What if you show him how brave you are by posing for a picture first, and then maybe he'll feel confident enough to join you? The strategy worked perfectly. Louis straightened his shoulders and gave the camera his most confident smile, demonstrating for his beloved toy how a real prince should pose for portraits. The resulting images captured something that formal posing never could have achieved, a natural nobility that shone from within rather than being imposed from without. As the session progressed, Catherine found herself marveling at how much Louis had grown, not just physically, but in terms of his personality and presence. She remembered his first professional photo session as a newborn, when he had slept peacefully through most of the shoot, occasionally opening his eyes to gaze solemnly at the camera. Then there had been his first birthday portraits, when he was just beginning to walk and was far more interested in exploring the photography equipment than sitting still for pictures. Each year had brought its own challenges and rewards. At 2, Louis had been in constant motion, requiring considerable creativity from Matt to capture any usable shots. At 3, he had been cooperative but easily distracted, his attention span lasting just long enough for a few quick photos before something else caught his interest. At 4, he had begun to understand the importance of the photographs while still maintaining his natural playfulness. Now, at 5, there was a new maturity evident in the way he approached the session. He understood that these pictures were important, that they would be seen by many people, and that he represented not just himself but his family and his future role. Yet he hadn't lost the spark of mischief that made him so uniquely Louis. Can we do some pictures where I'm not just standing still? Louis asked during another break. Maybe where I'm doing something brave or exciting? Catherine and Matt exchanged glances. This wasn't typically how formal royal portraits were conducted, but they both recognized the wisdom in Louis's request. The most memorable photographs were often those that captured authentic moments rather than posed perfection. What would you like to do? Matt asked. Louis considered the question seriously. Maybe I could be reading a book about dinosaurs? Or building something with my blocks? Or his face lit up with inspiration. Maybe I could be taking care of my plants. The plant idea intrigued Catherine. Louis had recently become fascinated with gardening, inspired by visits to his great-grandmother's gardens at Windsor Castle. He had his own small pot garden on the palace terrace, where he grew herbs and flowers, with the dedicated attention that he brought to everything that captured his interest. Within minutes, the team had relocated to the palace's conservatory, where Louis's small garden was thriving under the careful attention he lavished upon it. The natural light streaming through the glass created a completely different atmosphere from the formal drawing room setup, and Louis immediately relaxed into his element. Catherine watched as her son carefully watered his plants, explaining to Matt about each variety and what special care it needed. His concentration was complete, his movements gentle and purposeful. When Matt began photographing him in this natural setting, the results were magical. These weren't traditional royal portraits, but they captured something equally valuable: the essence of who Louis was at this moment in time. "These plants are my responsibility," Louis explained seriously as he adjusted the position of a small pot containing herbs. "Daddy says that being responsible for something smaller than yourself is good practice for being responsible for bigger things later." The profound simplicity of his statement struck Catherine deeply. Here was her 5-year-old son, unconsciously preparing himself for the responsibilities that would one day be his, learning life lessons through the simple act of caring for growing things. The metaphor was almost too perfect. This little prince nurturing life while being nurtured himself, growing in wisdom and stature while helping other living things do the same. As the afternoon progressed, they moved through several different setups and locations within the palace. There were formal portraits in the staterooms, where Louis posed with appropriate dignity among the historical furnishings that spoke of centuries of royal tradition. There were playful shots in his own room, surrounded by the toys and books that defined his current world, and there were intimate family spaces, where he appeared most relaxed and genuine. Throughout it all, Catherine found herself experiencing a complex mix of emotions: pride at how beautifully Louis handled the attention and requirements of the shoot, amazement at his natural photogenic quality, and his ability to project both innocence and regality. But underlying it all was a persistent ache, the maternal recognition that each photograph was documenting not just a moment, but the passage of time itself. She remembered holding him as a newborn, when he seemed so impossibly tiny and fragile. She recalled his first words, his first steps, his first day of nursery school when he had walked bravely through the doors while she fought back tears in the car. Now here he was, 5 years old and growing more independent with each passing day, still needing her guidance and love, but increasingly capable of navigating the world on his own terms. The photography session was going beautifully, but Catherine knew that no camera could capture what she was experiencing as his mother. The photographers would create lovely images that would preserve this moment for posterity, but they couldn't capture the sound of his laughter or the warmth of his hugs. They couldn't document the private conversations they shared, or the way he still sometimes crawled into her bed early in the morning just to be close. As the day progressed toward late afternoon, Louis began to show signs of fatigue. The excitement and concentration required for the shoot were taking their toll on his 5-year-old energy reserves. But rather than becoming cranky or uncooperative, he seemed to settle into a quieter, more contemplative mood that brought out different qualities in the photographs. Matt, with his experienced eye for working with children, recognized the shift and adapted his approach accordingly. The final shots of the day captured Louis in moments of quiet reflection, his young face showing glimpses of the man he would someday become while still retaining all the softness and wonder of childhood. Catherine realized that this session was creating more than just birthday portraits. These photographs would become historical documents, capturing a specific moment in the life of a future member of the royal family. But more personally, they were creating treasured memories of Louis at 5, preserving forever the boy he was at this particular point in his journey toward manhood. As the afternoon shadows began to lengthen across the palace grounds, Catherine found herself positioned behind Matt's camera setup, watching her son through both her own eyes and through the lens that would share his image with the world. From this vantage point, she could observe the subtle interplay between photographer and subject, the gentle coaxing and patient waiting that created truly memorable portraits. Matt had developed a rhythm with Louis over the years, understanding intuitively when to capture candid moments and when to direct more formal poses. Catherine watched as he worked, noting how he spoke to Louis not as a photographer directing a subject, but as one friend encouraging another. This approach had always yielded the most natural and engaging photographs, capturing Louis's genuine personality, rather than a forced version of what people might expect from a young royal. "Tell me about your favorite adventure with Mr. Dinosaur," Matt suggested as he adjusted his camera settings. Louis immediately brightened, launching into an elaborate tale about a recent expedition through the palace gardens where Mr. Dinosaur had supposedly discovered a new species of flower that only bloomed when no one was looking. As Louis spoke, his entire demeanor transformed. His eyes sparkled with the joy of storytelling, his hands gestured expressively to illustrate the more dramatic moments of the adventure, and his smile became completely unguarded. Matt captured it all. The sequence of images documenting not just Lewis's physical appearance, but the vivacity and imagination that made him so uniquely himself. Catherine found herself thinking about the relationship between public and private identity that would shape Lewis's entire life. These photographs would be scrutinized by royal watchers around the world, analyzed for signs of his developing personality and his fitness for his future role. Yet the boy in front of the camera was simply her son, unaware of the weight of expectation that would eventually settle upon his shoulders. There was something both beautiful and heartbreaking about his current innocence. Louis knew he was a prince, in the way that other children knew their parents' professions. It was simply a fact about his family, rather than a burden to bear. He understood that his pictures would be in newspapers, and that people were interested in his birthdays and activities. But he didn't yet fully comprehend the lifelong scrutiny and responsibility that would accompany his position. Catherine watched as Matt guided Louis through a series of more formal poses, noting how naturally her son adapted to each request. There was an innate grace in the way he held himself, a quality that couldn't be taught or forced. She wondered if it was genetic, this ability to command attention without demanding it, or if it was something he had absorbed from growing up surrounded by the protocols and expectations of royal life. The palace staff moved quietly around the edges of the session, ensuring everything ran smoothly while remaining unobtrusive. Mrs. Henderson appeared periodically with refreshments and gentle encouragement for Louis. The security detail maintained their protective presence without interfering with the creative process. Everyone involved understood their role in creating an environment where authentic moments could unfold naturally. As the session progressed, Catherine began to notice details that others might miss. The way Louis automatically adjusted his posture when he sensed the camera focusing on him, a learned response from years of being photographed. How he had developed his own strategy for dealing with the bright lights, closing his eyes for a moment and then opening them when Matt was ready to shoot. The unconscious way he arranged his expression into what he probably thought of as his prince face, a slightly more serious version of his normal smile. These observations made Catherine simultaneously proud of his adaptability and protective of his childhood innocence. Louis was learning to navigate public attention with grace and cooperation, but she never wanted him to lose the spontaneous joy and curiosity that made him such a delightful companion. Matt suggested moving to the library for some shots that would emphasize Louis's growing literacy and love of learning. The palace library, with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and rich wood paneling, provided a backdrop that spoke of education, tradition, and the preparation for future responsibilities. Louis selected several of his favorite books, including a beautifully illustrated volume about dinosaurs. As he posed with these books, Catherine could see him making the connection between his current enjoyment of stories and the broader world of knowledge and responsibility they represented. "Mummy reads to me every night," Louis announced to Matt, as he carefully turned the pages of the dinosaur book. "Sometimes we read about real things, and sometimes we read about made-up things, but Mummy says both kinds of stories are important because they help us understand the world." Catherine felt her heart swell with pride and tenderness at this unprompted testimony to their bedtime ritual. These quiet moments of connection, when she and Louis would curl up together with a favorite book, were among her most treasured experiences of motherhood. The fact that he valued these times enough to mention them during his portrait session spoke to the deep bond they shared. Matt captured several images of Louis reading, his young face serious with concentration as he studied the pictures and text. There was something deeply moving about seeing her son engaged with books in the same library where generations of royals had studied and learned. The continuity of education and tradition was almost tangible in these photographs, linking Louis to his ancestors while documenting his unique place in the ongoing royal story. As they prepared for the final setup of the day, Catherine realized how much she had learned about Louis simply by observing him in this structured environment. Away from the casual chaos of daily family life, she could see more clearly how much he had matured over the past year. His attention span had increased significantly, his ability to follow direction had improved, and his natural charisma had developed into something quite remarkable for such a young child. The final portrait series was designed to be the most intimate, capturing Louis in the golden afternoon light that streamed through the tall windows of his favorite palace sitting room. This space, more than any other, felt like home to their family. It was where they gathered for quiet conversations, where homework was completed and games were played, where the formal requirements of royal life gave way to the ordinary pleasures of family time. Matt positioned Louis near the window, where the natural light created a soft, warm glow around his figure. The resulting images had an almost ethereal quality, as if Louis were being touched by something magical. Catherine found herself fighting back tears as she watched her son in this beautiful light, looking so grown up, yet still unmistakably her little boy. "Can Mummy be in one of the pictures?" Louis asked suddenly, turning to look directly at Catherine with an expression of such love and trust that it took her breath away. "I want to have a picture of us together on my special day." Matt immediately agreed, recognizing the value of capturing the bond between mother and son. Catherine joined Louis by the window, kneeling beside him so their faces were at the same level. As Matt focused his camera on them, she felt the familiar comfort of Louis's small hand finding hers, his natural gesture of connection and affection. The photographs that resulted from this spontaneous request would become some of Catherine's most cherished images. They captured not just what Louis looked like at 5, but what their relationship looked like at this particular moment in time. The trust and love between them was visible in every frame, documenting a bond that would evolve and deepen as Louis grew, but would always remain fundamental to who he was as a person. As the session drew to a close, Catherine reflected on what had been accomplished during these hours of careful documentation. They had created beautiful formal portraits that would satisfy the public's interest in Louis's growth and development. They had captured intimate moments that would serve as precious family memories. But perhaps most importantly, they had honored Louis as he was right now, at 5 years old, preserving this specific moment in his journey toward adulthood. The late afternoon light continued to stream through the windows as Matt began packing his equipment. Louis, energized by the successful completion of his portrait session, chatted excitedly about which photographs might be his favorites and whether Mr. Dinosaur had looked brave enough in the pictures to inspire other toy dinosaurs to be courageous. Catherine realized that this day had given her something unexpected beyond the beautiful portraits they had created. It had provided her with hours of concentrated attention to her son. Time to really observe and appreciate who he was becoming. In the busy pace of royal life, with its schedules and obligations, such focused observation was a rare gift. She had been able to see Louis through both her own loving eyes and through the more objective lens of the camera, creating a multifaceted portrait of her son that she would treasure long after he had outgrown this particular stage of childhood. As the photography equipment was carefully packed away and the palace staff began restoring the rooms to their usual arrangements, Catherine found herself in an unexpected moment of quiet reflection with Louis. The excitement of the portrait session had given way to a peaceful contentment, and her son had settled beside her on the window seat in their private sitting room, still clutching Mr. BBC's dinosaur but now relaxed and thoughtful rather than energized by the day's activities. The late afternoon light cast long shadows across the room, creating an atmosphere of gentle intimacy that felt like a natural conclusion to their special day. Catherine looked down at Louis, noting how the formal clothes he had worn for the portrait somehow made him appear older, more mature than she had realized. His chestnut hair was slightly mussed from the various styling attempts throughout the day, returning him to the slightly disheveled state that she found so endearing. "Mummy?" Louis said quietly, his voice carrying a seriousness that sometimes surprised her with its depth. "Why did everyone want to take so many pictures of me today?" The question was so direct and innocent that Catherine felt her heart constrict with the weight of what it represented. How could she explain to a 5-year-old that his birthday mattered to thousands of people he would never meet? How could she make him understand that his life would always be of public interest simply because of the family he was born into? "Well, darling," she began carefully, "people care about our family because Daddy and I have special jobs, and someday you and George and Charlotte might have special jobs too." When someone has a birthday, especially an important birthday like turning 5, people like to celebrate with them, even if they can't be there in person.
Louis considered this explanation with the serious attention he gave to all new information.
Like how we send birthday cards to people we love but can't visit. Exactly like that, Catherine confirmed, marveling at his ability to find such apt comparisons. The photographs are like birthday cards that we share with everyone who cares about you. But they don't really know me, Louis pointed out with the logical precision that characterized his thinking. They don't know that I like to build dinosaur cities with my blocks, or that I always eat the marshmallows out of my hot chocolate first, or that I can do a handstand for almost 10 seconds now. Catherine smiled at his list of accomplishments and personal preferences, each one a small window into his developing personality. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. They know that you're Prince Louis, and that you're 5 years old, and that you're part of our family. But they don't know all the special things that make you you. Will they ever know those things?" he asked. And Catherine heard in his voice a mixture of curiosity and something that might have been longing. The question touched on something Catherine had been thinking about throughout the day. The public Louis, The one who appeared in photographs and official announcements was necessarily a limited version of her complete, complex, wonderful son. The world would see his milestones and his formal appearances, but they would never witness his elaborate bedtime negotiations or his passionate discussions about which dinosaur would win in various hypothetical battles. "I think," she said slowly, "that as you grow up, people will get to know you better. They'll see your interests and your personality, especially the things you choose to share with them. But there will always be parts of you that belong just to our family and your close friends. That's normal and healthy for everyone." Louis nodded thoughtfully, then shifted position so he could look directly into her eyes. "Mummy, do you ever get sad that I'm growing up?" The directness of the question caught Catherine completely off guard. She had thought her emotions had been well hidden during the day's activities, but apparently Lewis's observational skills were more acute than she had realized. The question also revealed a level of empathy and awareness that surprised her, even though she had long recognized Lewis's sensitivity to the feelings of others. "Sometimes I do feel a little sad," she admitted, deciding that honesty was the best approach. "Not because I don't want you to grow up, because growing up means you'll get to do wonderful new things and have amazing adventures. But because, when you grow up, you won't need me in exactly the same way you do now, and I love being needed by you. I'll always need you," Lewis said with the absolute conviction that only a child could possess. "Even when I'm as big as Daddy, I'll still want you to be my mummy, and I'll always want to be your mummy," Catherine replied, pulling him closer. "Being your mummy is one of my favorite jobs in the whole world." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the afternoon light gradually fade toward evening. Catherine found herself memorizing this moment, the weight of Louis against her side, the way his hair smelled like the gentle shampoo they used for children, the trust and affection in his relaxed posture. These were the moments that no photograph could capture, the quiet intimacies that made up the real substance of their relationship. "Mummy," Louis said eventually, "can I ask you something important?" "Of course, darling. You can always ask me important things. When I'm grown up and I have my special job like Daddy, will I still be allowed to love dinosaurs?" The question was so quintessentially Lewis, combining his awareness of future responsibilities with his passionate current interests, that Catherine felt simultaneously amused and deeply moved. She thought about all the future kings and queens who had maintained private interests and passions alongside their public duties, and realized that Louis was already beginning to understand the balance he would need to strike between personal fulfillment and royal obligation. "I think loving dinosaurs might actually help you with your special job," she told him. "Learning about dinosaurs teaches you about history and science and how the world changes over time. Those are all things that could make you better at helping people and making important decisions." Louis brightened at this possibility. "Really? So Mr. Dinosaur might be helping me practice for being a prince." "Mr. Dinosaur is definitely helping you practice being thoughtful and caring and curious about the world," Catherine confirmed. "Those are some of the most important qualities for anyone to have, especially someone with a special job." As evening approached, Catherine reflected on how much had been accomplished during this seemingly simple day of birthday portraits. Beyond the beautiful images that had been created, the day had provided opportunities for meaningful conversations and deeper understanding between mother and son. She had gained new insights into Louis's developing sense of self and his growing awareness of his unique position in the world. The portrait session had also highlighted how quickly Louis was maturing. His ability to cooperate with professional requirements, his natural ease in front of the camera, and his thoughtful questions about his public role all indicated a child who was successfully navigating the complexities of his unusual life. Yet he remained unmistakably a 5-year-old, with all the wonder and spontaneity that childhood should contain. Catherine thought about the images Matt had captured throughout the day, knowing that they would soon be shared with the world as official birthday portraits. The public would see Louis as a handsome, well-dressed young prince, growing up in beautiful surroundings with obvious advantages and opportunities. But the real Louis, the boy who worried about his toy dinosaur's courage and asked profound questions about growing up and responsibility, that Louis would remain largely unknown to the wider world. There was something both protective and melancholy about this separation between public and private identity. Catherine was grateful that Louis could maintain his privacy and develop his personality away from public scrutiny, but she also felt a maternal pride in his remarkable qualities that she couldn't fully share. The world would see his birthday portraits and note his growth, but they wouldn't know about his compassion for others, his creative storytelling, or his thoughtful observations about life. As they prepared to head downstairs for a quiet family dinner, Louis suddenly turned to Catherine with one more question. "Mummy, when people see my birthday pictures, what do you hope they think about me?" The question revealed yet another layer of his growing sophistication and self-awareness. At 5 years old, he was already beginning to understand that public perception mattered and that his image would be interpreted and discussed by strangers. Catherine considered her answer carefully. "I hope they see what I see," she said finally. "A kind, curious, brave little boy who cares about others and finds joy in the world around him. I hope they see someone who will grow up to use his advantages to help people and make the world a better place." Lewis nodded solemnly, apparently satisfied with this response. As they made their way downstairs to join the rest of the family for dinner, Catherine realized that this conversation had been as important as any of the formal portraits created during the day. Through their honest discussion of growing up responsibility and public life, she had helped Lewis begin to understand his unique position while affirming his individual worth and inherent dignity. The day had begun with a mother's bittersweet anticipation of marking another milestone in her child's life. It was ending with a deeper appreciation for who Louis was becoming and confidence in his ability to handle the responsibilities that lay ahead, while remaining true to his authentic, wonderful self. 3 weeks after the birthday portrait session, Catherine sat in her private study reviewing the final selection of images that Matt had submitted for approval. The morning light streaming through her office window illuminated the photographs spread across her desk, each one capturing a different aspect of Lewis, at 5 years old. As she studied them with fresh eyes, she was struck by how completely they documented not just a moment in time, but a transformation in progress. The formal portrait showed Lewis as the public would see him, a handsome young prince with an engaging smile and natural poise that suggested both current charm and future gravitas. His clothes were impeccable, his posture dignified, his expression appropriately serious yet warm. These were the images that would appear in newspapers around the world, marking his 5th birthday for the official record and satisfying the public's curiosity about his growth and development. But it was the candid moments captured between the formal poses that spoke most deeply to Catherine's heart. There was Louis explaining something earnestly to Mr. Dinosaur, his face animated with the passion he brought to all his stories. There he was tending to his small garden, his concentration complete and his movements gentle with the care he lavished on his growing plants. And there, in perhaps her favorite image of the collection, he was looking directly at the camera, with an expression of such open trust and joy that it seemed to illuminate the photograph from within. Each image told a story, not just about how Louis looked at 5, but about who he was becoming as a person. Catherine could see the threads of character that were already weaving themselves into the fabric of his personality. His natural empathy was evident in the way he positioned Mr. Dinosaur carefully in several shots, ensuring his beloved companion felt included and important. His growing sense of responsibility showed in the serious attention he paid to his garden and his books. His inherent joy in life radiated from his genuine smiles and animated expressions. The telephone rang, interrupting her contemplation. It was William, calling from his morning engagement to check on the final photo selections before they were released to the press. "How do they look?" he asked, and Catherine could hear the mixture of pride and protectiveness in his voice that always accompanied discussions about their children's public appearances. "Beautiful," she replied simply. "Matt has outdone himself. You can see Louis growing up, but he still looks like our little boy. Is he still excited about people seeing them?" Catherine smiled, remembering Louis's continued enthusiasm about his special pictures. Every few days since the session, he had asked when people would be able to see the photographs, not out of vanity, but from genuine curiosity about sharing something he considered important and special. He asked again this morning if today was the day his pictures would be in the newspapers, she told William. "I think he's quite proud of how grown up he looked." "He should be proud," William said warmly. "From what I saw during the session, he handled everything with remarkable grace. 5 years old, and already showing more poise than some adults manage in front of cameras." After they finished discussing the logistics of the photo release, Catherine returned to her quiet contemplation of the images. She thought about all the birthday portraits that had come before in the royal family. Generations of princes and princesses captured at significant moments in their lives. Someday, these photographs of Louis would be historical documents studied by future generations who would want to understand what the royal family looked like in 26. But beyond their historical significance, these portraits represented something more personal and immediate. They were the culmination of 5 years of watching Louis grow and develop, 5 years of celebrating his unique personality while gently guiding him toward an understanding of his future role. They documented the successful navigation of his early childhood, showing a boy who was confident without being conceited, aware of his position without being burdened by it. Catherine thought about the conversations she and Louis had shared since the portrait session. He had continued to ask thoughtful questions about growing up and responsibility, showing a level of introspection that sometimes surprised her with its depth. Just the previous evening, he had announced that he wanted to learn more about dinosaurs so he could teach other children interesting things when I'm older and have my special job. The comment had revealed so much about his developing understanding of leadership and service. At 5 years old, he was already beginning to grasp that his future position would involve sharing knowledge and helping others learn. His desire to combine his personal passion for dinosaurs with his sense of future responsibility showed a maturity that boded well for the man he would eventually become. Mrs. Henderson appeared at the study door with a tea tray, noting the photographs spread across the desk. "Those are lovely pictures of Prince Louis, Your Royal Highness," she said, with the warm affection she held for all the children. "He's growing up so fast, but he's still got that special spark that makes him such a joy to be around." Catherine smiled at the assessment. Mrs. Beecham. Henderson had been with the family long enough to have particular insight into each child's development, and her observation about Lewis's special spark was particularly apt. Despite the formal requirements and public scrutiny that came with his position, Lewis had maintained the curiosity and enthusiasm that made him such delightful company. As the morning progressed, Catherine found herself thinking about the broader context of Lewis's 5th birthday and what it represented for their family. With George now 12 and beginning to understand the weight of his future responsibilities as heir, and Charlotte at 10 showing her own strong personality and interests, Lewis's development marked the completion of their children's early childhood years. Soon, all three would be school-age children with increasingly independent lives and developing identities. The realization brought the familiar mixture of pride and nostalgia that accompanied every parenting milestone. Catherine was enormously proud of how all three children were growing and developing, each showing unique strengths and qualities that would serve them well in their future roles. But she also felt the poignant awareness that their childhood years were passing quickly, each birthday marking time that could never be recaptured. Later that day, when Louis returned from his morning at nursery school, he immediately asked to see the final photographs again. Catherine spread them out on the sitting room table, watching his face as he studied each image with serious attention. "I look very princely," he announced with satisfaction. "But I also look like me." "That's good, isn't it, Mummy?" "That's perfect." Catherine agreed, struck by his instinctive understanding of the balance between public role and personal identity that would be crucial throughout his life. "You should always look like yourself, even when you're being very princely." "Can we send one to great-grandmama?" Louis asked, referring to Queen Elizabeth II with the formal affection that characterized his relationship with his great-grandmother. "I think she would like to see how grown-up I look now." Catherine assured him that a special selection would indeed be sent to the Queen, along with a personal note from Louis describing his favorite moments from the portrait session. The tradition of sharing family photographs with Her Majesty was one that had continued throughout Catherine and William's marriage, maintaining the close family bonds despite the formalities of royal protocol. As afternoon turned toward evening, Catherine reflected on what this birthday and its documentation had meant for their family. Beyond the beautiful photographs and the public celebration of Louis's growth, the day had provided an opportunity for deeper connection and understanding. The conversation sparked by the portrait session had revealed new depths in Louis's thinking and awareness, showing a child who was successfully processing the complexities of his unique life while maintaining his essential joy and curiosity. The portraits themselves would serve multiple purposes in the years to come. They would be treasured family memories, documenting Louis exactly as he was at 5 years old. They would be historical records, showing future generations what the royal family looked like in this particular era. They would be public documents satisfying the world's interest in the growth and development of the young prince. But, perhaps most importantly, they represented a moment of successful collaboration between all the elements that shaped Louis's life. His natural personality and charm, his family's loving guidance and protection, the professional skill of the photographer, and the public's genuine affection for the royal children had all combined to create something beautiful and meaningful. As Catherine prepared for bed that evening, she looked once more at her favorite photograph from the session. It showed Louis in natural light. His face turned toward the camera with an expression of complete openness and trust. There was something timeless about the image, as if it captured not just how he looked at 5, but something essential about who he was as a person. In years to come, when Louis was grown and perhaps had children of his own, Catherine knew she would look at this photograph and remember not just how handsome he had been at 5, but how kind and curious and joyful he had been. The portrait session had been about marking a milestone and sharing a celebration with the world, but it had also been about honoring the remarkable little boy he was right now, at this particular moment in his journey toward adulthood. The day had begun with a mother's bittersweet awareness that her youngest child was growing up. It had ended with a deeper appreciation for the wonderful person he was becoming, and confidence that the foundations of character being laid in these early years would serve him well throughout his life. The photographs would preserve the memory of Louis at 5, but the real legacy of this birthday would be carried forward in the continued development of his generous heart, curious mind, and natural grace. As Catherine finally turned off the lights and headed to bed, she felt grateful for the privilege of documenting this moment in Louis's life, and confident that the boy captured in these portraits was well prepared for whatever adventures and responsibilities lay ahead in his remarkable future.